My First Job, hosted by Mike Wood, only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of My First Job. I'm here in wonderful San Diego at TA Week, so we're doing some in-person interviews, which is great for the show, and I got to meet the one and only Adam Posner. Welcome to the show.
Yes, Mike, it's good to be on the other side of the microphone here at TA Week. We recorded our HR morning show live this morning. That was pretty cool. Our first
7 a.m.
Our first live show, and I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I wasn't. It was 7 a.m., so I didn't tune
We
in.
did the live.
Yeah,
Purple
see,
Acorn show.
he's right here.
We didn't plan this.
You're from New York,
Yes.
and which bridge is this?
That is the 59th Street Bridge. It's the last free bridge, and people are trying to use it in a way to avoid the congestion pricing in New York, and you have to make an immediate right turn when you get off the bridge, I think. Otherwise, you're going to get dinged for that $8 or $9 coming off.
See, we're getting practical advice here.
Yes. New press shots, finally. I had to get the man bun and the beard in here. So this is a cool concept. Tell me what we're doing here.
We are talking about your first job. Everybody has a funny first job story. I've had some real weird ones on the show. I've had someone who worked at a Amish smorgasbord. John Baldino, I always reference. He worked at Friendly's, and he was trying to wash dishes and clean up the caramel.
I thought he was a dancer.
Well, he did that too. He's done a lot.
Like Chippendales kind of dancing?
Yeah, he's told me before it's like a cage dancer. So I don't know what that means.
We're going to have to dig into that tonight at the after party.
All right. So were you a cage dancer for your first job?
No, I didn't fit the physical requirements or the dancing abilities for that one.
What was your first job?
Yes, I loved my first job. So my first job, I was a photographer's assistant. So I went around to weddings and bar mitzvahs in Long Island, and I held the flash for the photographer. And I can't even tell you how many weddings and bar mitzvahs and the shenanigans that I saw, but I learned how to be a photographer. I always had a passion for photography, and there was a local photographer in Merrick that wasn't too far, Merrick, Long Island, from my house. And I'm not sure where the ad was, or maybe somebody connected with us, but it was an opportunity to be a photographer's assistant, and it actually paid pretty well. And we're talking 1995, 96. I was, and then I came back, and then during college breaks, I would do it also. And I learned a lot of things in that role, which we'll get to in a minute.
Wait, so it paid well. I remember.
It paid well.
I think I was making minimum wage at the time, which was like $5.25, I think, but you were well ahead of that.
Well ahead of that. So,
nice.
During the week, I would work in the office a couple days a week in the photographer's office, and I would watch. His name was Dennis. He's an amazing photographer. He actually shot our wedding also, my wife's wedding. Nice. And he taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to put an album together, and back in the day it was a little bit different, but also how to sit with the client and pick which photos and the layout. And it's quite an emotional process, but early on I look back on that, and it was really customer relations, how to handle people, how to handle different. It's a highly emotional, in a good way.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of conflict.
But
right?
People are stressed.
People are very
Unless
stressed.
It's a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, well, they're stressed for that too, but you learn a lot. So during the week, I was in the studio, and I was putting albums together, and I was doing a lot of the logistics work of physically putting the process together. And on the weekend, some days I would do 2, maybe 3 parties in a weekend, and it paid very well, and then we also get tipped out. But I had to wear a tuxedo, and at the time, I didn't want to go buy a full tuxedo. So I remember my mom taking me to one of the suit stores, and I bought out. She's like, "You only need a black suit, and we'll get you a little bow tie." And I would wear like a white button-down shirt with a little bow tie, and I would stand there. I'll do it this way. I would stand there at these parties and hold the flash up, and I had to angle myself so I wasn't in the shot, right? Yeah. And I had to angle myself so the lighting was right there too. And I also learned how to shoot. And back then we were shooting on a big cameras, and 135. It was a Hasselblad, and the rolls of film were about this big, and it was a special way to load them. This is before digital.
Yeah.
And my job was also to change the film, and I also had to give the photographer the cartridge. And think about this. It was that family's memories on there, and if I screwed it up,
they're gone.
So during the week, he literally had like a dummy roll for me that I would just practice on. And it was tough because it was a big roll, and you had to take the other one out, roll it tightly, lick the glue on it, tighten it, and then you can't lose it. So I had a special little pouch that I had to put all the film in. And I remember once I screwed up a roll, and it was really bad, and we had to go back. And luckily, it wasn't like their wedding cake. It wasn't like a prime photo. We were doing table shots. You know, when the people come and stand behind you, and you do the table at the wedding.
Yep.
So we actually had to go back and reshoot a couple of tables. And I learned a hard lesson the hard way, that you don't mess with people's photos.
You got to be very careful But you do a lot of video stuff now, and
Yeah.
so you learned right off the bat, like the framing and all that stuff.
I learned a little bit about that, but what I really learned also was how to navigate in a stressful situation. You're at these weddings and parties, and people are wasted, and you're trying to coordinate photos, and you're seeing stress between the families. And we saw a lot of drama. We saw a lot of drama.
Oh,
We saw a lot of
let's spill the tea.
we saw a lot of nonsense, a lot of illegal drug use.
Oh.
I also learned how to eat quickly because we would have to eat during the cocktail hour.
Yeah.
And one of the things I do at events even like this is I take the napkins and the forks and I put them in my back pocket so I have two hands available. And it's a rookie mistake when people just try to hold the napkins and the forks all together. But you have back pockets. Put the forks and the napkins in your back pocket and you have an extra hand.
Smart.
Pro tip from Paz right here.
Yeah, practical advice on the My First Job
I'm
podcast.
adding value at every conversation that I have.
All right, so you're not a photographer.
I'm an amateur photographer.
Oh, you still are.
I like to shoot a lot. I bought myself a nice, like when digital was morphing, this awesome SLR camera. But I put it down ever since the iPhone came out. I don't think I picked up my SLR camera since then.
So iPhone's claims that their camera's great.
It's just easy. Like, why would I carry around the giant camera with me when I could just have this thing in my pocket anyway, right?
Yeah, it's great. I just got the 16. I'm a little bit behind in my technology, but it is great. So tell me about, how did you get into recruiting?
Oi. How did I get into recruiting? Well, anybody knows my story. I worked 15 years in marketing and media. And about 10 years ago, I'm approaching my 10-year recruiting anniversary. I was working for the great Gary Vaynerchuk over at VaynerMedia. And unfortunately, the grass was not greener on the other side. I lost my job, Mike, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go back and interview for roles in marketing and media because how the hell am I going to tell everybody, hey, I just got fired, hire me, right? Like, that's not a good story.
Nope.
And the truth of the matter is I really wasn't enjoying it. And we just bought a house. I needed to make more money. And sales was calling my name. And recruiting was a profession that at the time I had the foresight to say, you know what? It's a sales role. And I have unlimited untapped potential, earning potential. And I jumped right in and I joined a great search firm called Onward Search. And I learned the art and science of recruiting. I learned how to be a recruiter and stayed at a search firm for about 3 years. And then I launched my own practice, NHP Talent Group. And the podcast was launched 6 years ago. And the rest is history.
And now you're on posters.
And now I'm on posters in San Diego here.
Yeah, I think when you get laid off or fired, I don't think people realize that it's going to happen to everybody at least once or something like that. And your story that you tell after that is, you're not going to say, oh, I was fired or whatever. You could say, well, it just didn't work out. They were going in a different direction.
Right, there's optics involved.
Yeah, your story is kind of what you make it. But I want to ask you what your thoughts are on the state of hiring today. There's a lot of craziness going on.
Yeah, it's all over the place right now. And I think that the problem that we have is on many fronts. You have a broken process. You have a flooded pipeline of really good folks and a pipeline of, let's call it what it is, average or below average folks out there that lost their jobs. Not everybody can be an A player. Let's keep it real here for a moment here.
Yep.
And the
problem B-.
And the problem is there's a lot of folks out there who are, B players competing against A players for a limited amount of roles. And it's a highly competitive market with a limited amount of jobs. And then you throw in tech that is skewing it in both good ways and bad ways for candidates, right? It's giving an advantage, and in my opinion, also a disadvantage, because a good recruiter could tell a BS AI generated resume, and I ping that against you. And the market right now is a complete disaster. I thought that we were waiting for the election to pass, politics to resolve. We're approaching the end of Q1 over here, and actually halfway through it, and I haven't
We're recording this 2 weeks into the term, and it's just been a mess.
I've not seen the positive indicators that I'd be hoping for.
So I kind of I feel like the weatherman in the perfect storm. That's just like, oh my God, this is all happening. I feel like there's like a white collar recession happening.
That's a good way to say it.
It's like those middle jobs are disappearing, and they're being replaced by either AI or they're being outsourced to people that don't need expensive U.S. benefits. And now I'm wondering is like, okay, 6 months from now, where are those people going to go? Like, what are they going to do? Like, I mean, I'm a marketing and comms guy, and now I'm kind of like,
me too.
But like, there's so many executives in the C-suite that just like, oh, we could just have ChatGPT be our.
But you still need someone to operate it and know what they're doing.
Yes.
Now, I think that what candidates and anyone who's out of work right now, I think you have to really, really take a good look in the mirror. Real true self-awareness assessment, Mike. And either say, I'm staying in this profession, but I need to upskill. Or maybe I need to pivot, or maybe I need to double down, right? And if you're thinking about a pivot, I did it. I'm sure you've done it in your career at
Yep.
points. It's a huge piece of humble pie, pivoting.
Yeah, I think
Because it requires you to really say, take a deep breath. I know that I'm going to have to take a step back, a step down financially, maybe a step down in my career, to hopefully take 2 or 3 steps forward. Because if they're not hiring in my industry, or I see that technology is taking over potential roles that I'm going to have, you need to do something different.
Yeah, so I got laid off over the summer. I was working as kind of like an in-house analyst for a vendor,
Right.
and it became pretty clear to me, and it was even before I was laid off, that analyst relations and that type of feature is kind of moving away from the organizations that are out there right now. They don't want to pay somebody to do that. They want someone to do that as part of something. But I said, I could sit around, but I love this industry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some content. So I'm going to stay relevant by creating the Wrap, my newsletter. Right. I'm going to do my first job podcast because I find people are interesting. And, you do have to pivot a little bit. But I think we're brought up to constantly be striving to move ahead onto that ladder. But at some point, you got to look and say, okay, what's really going to make you happy and content?
It's a tough balance because you have mouths to feed. Most of us have mouths to feed. And you get to a point where, like, listen, of course you want to be happy in your career. So I'm not happy, I'm not going to be enjoying it. And then what the hell's the point of just living and doing? But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to do. So you have to look for the opportunity to pivot. And I have friends that were like in finance that got laid off and moved into something tangent to that, right? Like they moved into like funding, right? They moved into other things that are related, that they could capitalize their skills and their experience, and they learned to enjoy it. They grew into it.
Yeah, I took a part of me when I was in grad school, I was a substitute teacher during the day because it was the perfect hours. I would work 7 to 2, night. And then I would drive into Boston and have class from 6 to 10, and I would do that. And so my daughter is in 3rd grade right now, and the opportunity came up to teach at her school for 5 weeks, and I passed all the requirements. I think you just have to have a face. But so I got the job.
Drug test.
Yep, no, I did pass all that. Got a 65.
Background check.
So it was so now I'm I got to be like a teacher for 5 weeks, and it's not paying anything, but it gave me so much perspective on what teachers have to deal with and what the classroom is like.
Respect, right? Respect to the teaching industry.
Oh, they need help. So it's there's a lot that they do. The people on the outside, they'll look at teachers and be like, "Oh, well, you're only working half
and
a
you
day.
got the summers off.
You got the summers off, and great. But there's so much prep time they have to do. Every kid has an individual education plan. Everything is out there. So it just, I do recommend if there's anybody out of work right now, look into substitute teaching. It's a lot of fun. The kids make me laugh. Some of them are difficult.
And it gives you that perspective.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. I was the tech teacher for K through 5.
It's funny because I have a daughter, a 7th grader, and a 1st grader. And I study with my 7th grader, and I do social studies, English. And my daughter says, because the way I help her study is through storytelling, and it's very linear now, a lot of the way they teach it. And she's like, Dad, the way you tell the story, especially like American history, I love American history, and I'm enjoying it. And then she's like, you're not just reading the questions and the answers together, you're actually teaching me and explaining me the story in the context of why the red coats were the red coats, and and we did recently the colonial with the Boston Tea Harbor, the Boston Tea Party, and she's like, wow, the way you explain that, I really understand it now. So I thought about it for a second too. I'm like, oh, maybe if I ever need to, maybe I could substitute teach. And then I realized I hate kids. I hate kids except for my kids, and I hate school, and I never want to do it again. So I'm not going to be a substitute teacher. I hate any child that's not mine. No, I'm kidding.
You're like the heat miser or something. You're just like this villain that showed up.
I would like to reverse Billy Madison. If you put me into a school, I'd be reverse Billy Madison. So now you're all gonna die. This is my very poor Adam Sandler person.
It sounded just like him. But so I'm a huge history nerd myself, and the funniest thing I've read about the redcoats and the British and stuff is that the regular soldier would be out in the sun all day, and so their red coats became kind of like a pinkish hue.
Oh God.
Meanwhile, the officers had these new red ones, so the Patriots were just like, shoot that guy. He's one of the leaders.
So they were able to self-identify who the leaders were. It made them easier to target.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so you can bring that home to your daughter. Tell that you learned it on
But they
my
never
first
called them
job.
the pink coats.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that might be a different thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was a great episode. Thank you for joining me. Everybody, look for Adam on the podcast and on the HR Morning Show. It's every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep. This is him right here.
Awesome.
So everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.